December was supposed to be the crescendo of my academic life, the final, exhilarating stretch toward the master's degree, a passport to a future I had built brick by agonizing brick. Instead, December became the month of my lowest, most profound humiliation, orchestrated by the one person I had foolishly called a colleague, Victor Sterling. Our relationship was always a razor's edge. We were the top two candidates in the prestigious bioengineering program, both vying for the coveted research fellowship, the key to truly launching a career in this ruthless industry. But while I relied on relentless, quiet work, Victor relied on performance, networking, and a chilling lack of scruples. I am Anna Volkov. That name, ironically, was the first layer of my disguise, my mother's maiden name. For 2 years, I had deliberately played the part of the struggling, over-earnest scholarship student. My clothes were slightly worn, my budget perpetually tight, my tiny apartment a deliberate contrast to the palatial estate that actually awaited me back in London. Why? Because I needed to prove myself without the colossal shadow of the Volkov dynasty, a global force in technological innovation, skewing the results. I needed this victory to be mine, earned on merit alone. Victor, and everyone else in our department, saw me simply as Anna from the library. Easy to overlook, easy to dismiss. The entire month was dominated by the approaching New Year's Eve Gala. This wasn't just any party. It was the annual Dean's Ball, where the leading bioengineering firm, Omnitech, notoriously made its final fellowship decision. The stakes were impossibly high. My thesis, titled Molecular Sculpting, a non-invasive technique for cellular regeneration, was the culmination of 2 years of near-sleepless nights. It was groundbreaking. It was beautiful. It was, quite frankly, my legacy. I had a single encrypted digital copy and one physical copy, bound in red leather, sitting in a locked drawer in my lab. The trouble started precisely 2 weeks before Christmas. Victor began circling my workspace with a predatory focus. He'd offer lukewarm compliments, which always felt more like veiled threats. "Anna, you look exhausted. Maybe take a break. Don't burn out before the finish line," he'd sneer, his eyes darting to my monitor. I brushed it off as typical Victor bravado, a final desperate attempt to psyche out his only real competition. Then came the first snow of the season, a deceptive blanket of purity covering the deceit beneath. I had submitted the final, pristine draft of my thesis to the department head, Professor Albright, 2 days before the holiday break. I felt the profound physical exhaustion lift, replaced by a deep, satisfying calm. I was done. I was ready. On December 23rd, Victor held an impromptu, mandatory celebration for the remaining students at a dreary, poorly lit bar. I went reluctantly. The air was thick with forced cheer and competitive tension. Victor, already several drinks in, raised his glass. "To Anna," he announced, his voice carrying the false ring of sincerity. "The hardest working student I know. Truly, it's inspirational, though perhaps a little too focused on the textbook. Wouldn't you say, old girl?" The humiliation was subtle, layered. It was the condescending patronization, the implication that I lacked the strategic finesse, the big picture thinking that he, the real genius, possessed. I smiled stiffly and downed my wine. I kept telling myself, just 2 more weeks. Then, the truth will speak for itself. The real gut punch came on December 26th, the first day back after the brief Christmas pause. I walked into the lab, the fluorescent lights humming over the sterile white surfaces, and felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. The drawer where I kept the physical, hardbound copy of my thesis was slightly ajar. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The digital copy, securely backed up, was fine, but the physical copy, the one with my handwritten marginalia, the one meant for the archives, was gone, vanished. A wave of panic hit me, quickly replaced by a glacial, focused rage. There were only 3 people with master keys to the lab: the dean, Professor Albright, and Victor. Victor, who had been acting increasingly smug. Victor, whose thesis topic, ostensibly about bone regeneration, had suddenly become vague, elusive, and suspiciously silent. I spent the next 3 days in a silent, agonizing investigation, reviewing every log, every security camera angle. There was nothing definitive, no smoking gun, only the confirmation that Victor had accessed the lab late on Christmas Eve, claiming to need final equipment checks. My plan began to form, a precise, cold, geometric shape cutting through the fog of my anger. The thesis itself could be replaced, but the trust, the quiet dignity of my 2 years of work, had been stolen. I realized that Victor wasn't just planning to plagiarize, he was planning to usurp my entire identity and credit. He was going to use my groundbreaking work, my intellectual DNA, to win the Omnitech Fellowship at the New Year's Ball. This theft transcended mere academic dishonesty. It was a character assassination on the grandest scale. It was a declaration of war. And Victor had made a fatal miscalculation. He thought he was stealing from Anna from the library, the impoverished scholarship girl with nothing but her degree to lose. He forgot that a Volkov never enters a fight she hasn't already won. I made a phone call that night, the call that would change everything. I didn't call the police. I didn't call the dean. I called my family's security and legal team, speaking in rapid, fluent Russian. The instructions I gave were simple, precise, and absolute. I needed a complete, silent, and instantaneous takeover of the academic narrative. I needed evidence that wasn't just damning, but theatrically destructive. I needed to ensure that when the clock struck midnight on December 31st, Victor's academic career wouldn't just end. It would combust in front of the entire faculty and industry leadership. The true work of my vengeance was beginning. I had 3 days until the New Year's Eve Gala. 3 days to transform myself from the humble victim to the unstoppable judge. The hum of the lab was no longer the sound of research. It was the quiet, methodical ticking of a very personal time bomb. Victor thought he had won the game. He was about to find out that he had merely triggered the final, most brutal level. He stole my thesis right before the New Year's. Big mistake. He had no idea who he was messing with, or the sheer undeniable power that was about to descend upon him. My disguise was about to come off, and the fireworks would be more than just festive. The 3 days leading up to the New Year's Eve Gala were a blur of calculated moves and forced composure. While outwardly I maintained the persona of the weary, anxious student finalizing her move-out details, internally, the Volkov machine was working with ruthless efficiency. My legal team confirmed that Victor hadn't just taken the physical copy. He had somehow coerced a corrupt IT employee to access the department's archives and replace my digital file with a heavily redacted, incomplete version, making my original submission look amateurish and unproven. He was creating a paper trail that proved my incompetence while simultaneously laying the groundwork for his triumphant presentation of my work. Victor, meanwhile, was basking in a smug confidence that was nearly unbearable to witness. He spent his afternoons in the communal study lounge, loud on his phone, discussing major revisions to his methodology with his wealthy, influential father, the same father who coincidentally chaired the board of a major Omnitech competitor. He was using the holiday lull not just to steal, but to broadcast his imminent victory, ensuring everyone knew he was the only one capable of delivering genius under pressure. I observed him, meticulously tracking his every move, every dismissive glance he threw my way. He had completely erased me from the narrative, treating me like background noise. Once, in the hallway, he stopped me, placing a patronizing hand on my shoulder. "Anna, rough few days, huh? Don't worry, there's always next year. You did your best. I'm thinking of dedicating my presentation to the unsung heroes of the lab. I'll mention you." The venom in his false sympathy was suffocating. I simply pulled away, forcing a small, tight smile. "That's very kind of you, Victor. I appreciate the thought." I let him see the vulnerability, the sting of the perceived defeat. It was crucial that he remain absolutely certain of his victory. The higher he climbed, the harder the fall would be. This was not just about retrieving a thesis. It was about public, irreversible justice. The seasonal backdrop of shared celebration only intensified the focus, the magnifying glass over every social interaction. My research team, a discrete unit operating under the Volkov family banner, had secured two critical pieces of information. First, they retrieved the original, full, uncorrupted version of my thesis from an off-site, encrypted server, complete with timestamps and digital fingerprints that traced the intellectual property back to my personal computer, every single keystroke accounted for. Second, and most damningly, they discovered a series of text messages between Victor and the IT employee, confirming the deliberate sabotage and offering a significant bribe in exchange for the file manipulation. The betrayal was meticulously documented. The final element of the plan involved my appearance. The New Year's Eve Gala was black tie, the epitome of high society academic networking. Victor expected Anna from the library to show up in a rented, ill-fitting dress, clutching a lukewarm glass of champagne, fading into the wallpaper. He expected the quiet student, desperate for acknowledgement. But Anna Volkov does not fade. On December 31st, I spent the afternoon transforming. I didn't hire a stylist. I used my own resources, the dormant power that had been hidden for 2 years. My attire was a gown custom-made in Paris, tailored to command attention, its deep crimson contrasting sharply with the winter white of the venue. The jewelry wasn't hired. It was family, a simple, stunning diamond necklace. The Volkov family crest, subtly incorporated into its setting. It was the armor of a woman who didn't need to try. She simply was the power in the room. As I arrived at the gala, held in the university's grand, marble-floored ballroom, the air was electric with anticipation. Champagne flutes clinked, reflecting the shimmering fairy lights draped over the towering Christmas trees, and the low hum of influential voices filled the space. The dean, Professor Albright, and, most importantly, the entire executive board of Omnitech were present, waiting to see which student would claim the spotlight. Victor was already there, holding court near the Omnitech CEO. He wore a tuxedo that looked slightly too expensive, his smile wide and artificial. He saw me enter the room, his eyes narrowed, taking in the transformation, the sudden undeniable presence I exuded. For a fraction of a second, I saw confusion, a flicker of doubt, but he quickly dismissed it. He probably thought I had maxed out my credit cards for one last desperate show of vanity. He approached me, glass in hand, the picture of condescending affability. "Anna, you scrub up well," he said, too loudly, drawing the attention of a nearby group of professors. "You know, I was just telling Professor Albright that I'm dedicating my presentation tonight to the transformative power of bioengineering. A fresh start for the new year, something truly innovative." He emphasized the word innovative, a pointed, cruel reference to the thesis he now believed was his own. I met his gaze, my smile serene, cold, and utterly terrifying. "I heard," I replied, my voice low and steady. "It sounds ambitious, Victor. I hope your presentation lives up to the title." He laughed, a short, self-satisfied bark. "Oh, it will, Anna. It absolutely will. Now, if you'll excuse me, the dean is calling. I have a career to launch." He walked away, not realizing that every step he took was carrying him closer to the precipice of his own destruction. The clock was ticking toward midnight. Omnitech's CEO was about to make the announcement, the moment of truth that Victor expected to be his crowning glory. The stage was set. The audience was expectant. The champagne was flowing. The trap was sprung. I moved to the side of the room, near the technical booth. awaiting the inevitable cue. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the intoxicating promise of vengeance. The quiet observer was about to become the center of the storm. The ballroom lights dimmed, signaling the moment of truth. Professor Albright stepped onto the stage, tapping the microphone to silence the mingling crowd. The atmosphere shifted from festive anticipation to taut, focused professionalism. This was the academic Super Bowl. Careers would be made or broken in the next 20 minutes. Victor stood poised in the front row, radiating an unearned confidence, his eyes already fixed on the Omnitech CEO, rehearsing his acceptance speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," Professor Albright announced, his voice booming across the speakers. "As the new year approaches, we celebrate the innovation that will define our future. Tonight, we select the recipient of the Omnitech Advanced Research Fellowship. We've reviewed 2 outstanding candidates, but one thesis truly stood out for its originality and real-world application." Victor gave a small, arrogant smirk, casting a quick, triumphant glance in my direction. He was certain my incomplete, doctored file had already disqualified me. He was ready for the applause. "And now," Albright continued, "we welcome the winner to present the key findings of their work. Please welcome Victor Sterling, presenting his thesis on molecular sculpting." Victor glided onto the stage, accepting the congratulatory handshakes with a practiced ease. The crowd erupted in polite professional applause. Victor took the podium, standing before a massive screen where the title slide was projected. Molecular Sculpting, a non-invasive technique for cellular regeneration, by Victor Sterling, MSc candidate. He began his presentation, his voice smooth and authoritative, detailing the methodology he had stolen from me. Presenting my deepest, most complex findings as his casual insights, he was a theatrical genius, selling my soul with persuasive fervor. As he spoke, I watched the Omnitech executives nodding, impressed by the apparent brilliance of the work. The humiliation was a cold, sharp knife twisting in my gut. He wasn't just stealing credit, he was erasing 2 years of my life in front of my face. This was the peak of his power. This was the moment I chose to strike. As Victor moved to the critical results and conclusions slide, the core of my original innovation, I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to the technical booth operator. Suddenly, Victor's voice faltered. The complex diagram on the screen, the detailed schematics of cellular restructuring that only I had perfected, shattered. The screen didn't go blank. It shifted. It didn't glitch. It corrected. A new title slide snapped into focus, rendered in the exact same font and format, but with 2 devastating changes. The title remained the same: Molecular Sculpting, a non-invasive technique for cellular regeneration. But the authorship line now read, in bold, undeniable letters, by Anna Volkov, MC candidate. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. Victor froze, his face draining of all color. He frantically pointed at the screen. What is this? There's a technical error." The technical error was just beginning. The screen switched again, displaying a full, unredacted, time-stamped log showing the original digital file submission on December 21st at 11:59 p.m., traced directly to my private server. Then came the truly theatrical blow. The display split into 2 halves. On the left, a side-by-side comparison of the 2 thesis abstracts was projected. Victor's version, the one he had just submitted, was filled with nonsensical jargon and clear structural flaws where my actual data had been clumsily edited out. On the right, my original, flawless abstract stood in stark, irrefutable contrast. On the bottom of the screen, a new, large notification flashed. Security alert. Unauthorized file access detected on deck 24th, 3:17 a.m. Digital fingerprint matched to V. Sterling's departmental credentials. Victor abandoned the podium, sprinting towards the AV technician. "You idiot! Fix this now! "You're ruining everything!" he shrieked, his composure utterly fractured, revealing the desperate fraud beneath the polished exterior. I stepped out from the shadows near the back of the room, my crimson dress drawing every eye. I walked slowly, deliberately, toward the stage, my heels clicking a slow, final rhythm on the marble floor. The hum of conversation had ceased entirely. The only sound was Victor's ragged, panicked breathing. Professor Albright, utterly bewildered, moved to intercept me. "Anna, what is the meaning of this intrusion?" I didn't answer him. I walked past the stunned professor and stopped directly beside the podium. I addressed Victor, who was now being physically restrained by the head of campus security. "It means," I said, my voice projected clearly through the microphone, cutting through the stunned silence, "that Mr. Sterling has spent the last week of the holiday season attempting to steal my life's work." I looked directly at the Omnitech CEO, who was watching the scene with rapt, professional interest. "My name is Anna Volkov. I did not need this fellowship to launch my career. I took this challenge to prove my merit. But Mr. Sterling's actions, and the evidence now projected on that screen, show that he is not only a cheat, but a liability." I paused, reaching into the pocket of my gown. I produced a small, elegant digital device, a product prototype from a new Volkov subsidiary. He stole the paper. He doctored the files. But he forgot that a Volkov always builds a superior backup. "The work you just heard him butcher," I gestured toward the screen, "is mine. And the evidence of his betrayal, including the text messages detailing the attempted bribery of the IT staff, has been automatically forwarded to every member of the University Senate and the Omnitech Executive Board. Happy New Year, Victor." The reversal was instant, absolute, and publicly humiliating. The dean rushed onto the stage, apologizing profusely to the Volkov representative, the quiet, unassuming student he had dismissed. Victor was led away, his frantic protestations muffled as the door closed behind him. His career combusted, not with a bang, but with a synchronized high-definition display of his own fraud, projected for his entire industry to witness on New Year's Eve. The Omnitech CEO approached me, his expression shifting from shock to profound respect. "Miss Volkov," he said, extending his hand, "your thesis is brilliant. Your strategic execution is flawless. We don't just need your research. We need your leadership. The fellowship is yours, effective immediately." I accepted the handshake, the triumph a cold, focused rush. I had come to the university to earn a degree. I left having asserted my true power, punishing the traitor who had thought he could steal my Christmas and my future. The clock struck midnight. The fireworks outside began to explode, but the most dazzling display had already happened inside the ballroom. The victim had triumphed.